Hello everyone. With the tragic news, Ray Stevenson has passed away at age 58. I first saw him as Titus Pullo on Rome. He played Frank Castle in Punisher Warzone. He was in The Other Guys, RRR, Thor. So many movies, so many great performances. He was a wonderful talent, gone far too soon. And with the recent news of his passing, I wanted to just talk about Punisher Warzone. This is an episode I was actually thinking of covering this summer, going over classic Marvel films pre-MCU, but also I went over the 2004 Punisher film starring Thomas Jane. You can check that out on the channel. I haven't really talked about Punisher Warzone here. This, in many ways, was a step back after the 2004 film, a bit more campy, a bit more akin to the Dolph Lundgren 80s film, but in another way, it captured the comics that no other Punisher film had captured as much. Seeing Punisher Warzone is like seeing the Max series panels come to life. And despite the dialogue, despite like the over-the-top gore, some of the funny humor, Ray Stevenson elevated this film as Frank Castle. And I just wanted to briefly talk about this underrated Punisher movie. If you're expecting something grounded like the 2004 film or something like Dark Knight, Iron Man, or Taxi Driver, you're not going to get it. But if you want a good time, action-packed scenes, gore, over-the-top scenes, you're going to love it. This is like a love letter to 80s, 90s action movies, but if it was merged with a slasher horror film. Punisher Warzone is just a fun film, and it's the perfect B movie in my opinion. Lexi Alexander directed this, female director. She did a wonderful job. In many ways, it's almost like this is such a tough film that they forgot to tell like a really compelling story with the action, but it doesn't need that. His flows, there's never a moment that feels like it's too long, you know. And it's just a fun Punisher movie, and it's very different than any other comic book movie. This is under the Marvel Knights property. Now, Thomas Jane was supposed to have a sequel. I would have loved to see what Thomas Jane's sequel would have been, especially after the video game in 2004 film. But that being said, this is almost like not only a reboot, but like a loose sequel in a way that Incredible Hulk was, where like you could tell it's after the previous film, but it's more akin to the comic book origin. And that's one thing that they have in Punisher Warzone, you know, his family actually gets killed at the park like in the original comics. For me, this film was heavily elevated by Ray Stevenson as Frank Castle and Dominic West as Jigsaw. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Name's Jigsaw. In addition to Jigsaw, we also have his brother Looney Bin Jim, played by Doug Hutchinson, who people may remember playing Toombs on the X-Files, for any X-Files fans out there. Julie Benz, another Dexter reunion. We have her play Angela Donatelli. Julie Benz, I don't know if it's the dialogue, the way it was written, or the acting, it's not her best work in this movie. Some of the dialogue is a step down from other superhero movies, and especially compared to some comic book movies now. But we have Dash Myhawk as Detective Martin Soap. He's great. He was in Silver Linings Playbook. Ray Donovan. I like seeing Martin Soap here in his relationship with Frank Castle. It's very much akin to the Marvel Comics series. We also have Colin Salmon as Paul Budiansky. Yeah, Oliver Queen's stepfather from Arrow and the guy from Resident Evil, The Laser Room. And then we have Wayne Knight as Microchip. I like seeing this comic book accurate Microchip in his relationship with Frank Castle. It starts with a bloody opening that is reminiscent of the graphic novel Batman Year One, where we have the mob meeting. And I have to say, besides the dialogue, you do get some kind of stereotypical New York accents. You could tell they filmed it in Europe, but it's like supposed to be New York. It has this weird Joel Schumacher kind of like glammed up gothic vibe. It's like very neon. It feels like, what if there was an R-rated version of Batman Forever? It's like that type of thing. But at the same time, Lexi Alexander was bringing a comic book panel to life, and what she does here is very reminiscent of seeing the Max pages from Marvel Comics and bringing that into live action. So I understand the flow of it. The opening is very reminiscent of a comic book and the Dolph Lundgren Punisher, but I love that in that way because it does feel like a comic book movie come to life. It's just that they made it gory and fun, you know. But I love the opening because you have all these mob families meeting, and Billy the Boot, who's basically Jigsaw. Dominic West in this is very reminiscent of Jack Nicholson in Batman '89, where he starts off as a mobster, and the first encounter he has with our protagonist ends up making him disfigured, and that's when he becomes just psychotic. It very much reminded me of Batman '89 in that regard. And I love this. You get to see Punisher wipe out this mob family. He goes on a chandelier and starts shooting weapons. Absurd, yes, but once you roll with it and you have the feeling of just letting go any preconceptions and enjoying this movie is going to be a total blast. You're going to have a hell of a time. I love this opening. Now, would Frank Castle have done some reconnaissance and known that there is a cop? Absolutely, but here he accidentally shoots an undercover cop while he basically leaves Billy the Boot for dead, leaves Jigsaw for dead, and that sets him on a dark path because he never kills innocents. He only kills those who deserve to be punished. But that's a very interesting complex to start the film off, and Ray Stevenson brought so much complexity and depth to the Frank Castle character. You see his turmoil. He's still haunted by his past. He's still just a former shell of himself. It's the mission. It's eradicating crime and all those who do evil that keeps him going. And I love seeing that in this. He lives in the sewers practically, kind of like the Dolph Lundgren Punisher. I love seeing MREs, meals ready to eat, but it's cool seeing the story set up, and it's just gory how Jigsaw gets created with like going through a bottle glass dispenser. Yeah, that's some crazy stuff, to say the least. But Julie Benz pretty much plays Angela Donatelli, and she's the wife of the cop that Frank Castle killed. The thing is, Jigsaw and his men did not know that that guy was an undercover cop, and he has some of the mob's money. So now the mob and Jigsaw's men are basically targeting Angela and her daughter. Meanwhile, Detective Budiansky knew her husband and has also been going after the Punisher. Martin Soap, of course, acts like he's going after the Punisher, but they have an arrangement. You know, he's been on the Punisher task force, but at the same time, he's gonna let Frank Castle go. You know, for those who've read the comics and played the video game, you know Detective Martin Soap and Frank Castle's relationship, and I love that they brought that here. And I think Dash Myhawk does a fantastic job. He is severely underrated in this film. I love seeing Jigsaw get formed and become psychotic, recruiting gangbangers and different neighborhoods in a montage that is like Patton-esque with Psychosocial by Slipknot playing. Oh yeah, and did I mention the soundtrack? You also have 7 Days Away, Take Me Away, and then Warzone by Rob Zombie. I love the soundtrack to this. The 2004 had an iconic soundtrack. This one's equally as underrated. The composer of this also does some wonderful music. There's that one shot where Frank Castle got done with his opening mission, is going back to base, and there's that wonderful shot with the music that's just perfect. It just has that Punisher vibe. You're not going to get an Oscar-winning film here, no, but I do think it is underrated as a comic book film in many ways. There are moments that take a step back for the Punisher character on film, but there are moments that propel it forward and show us the Max series and sides of the Punisher from the comics that we have never seen on film, and for that I respect it. I remember when this film came out, I was kind of mixed on his outfit, but at the same time it kind of makes sense, even though I don't like the collar and the bullet armor, but I'm like, if somebody's going to be tactical, they want to cover up with armor, and Ray Stevenson was a beast as Frank Castle, going through training and everything. He brings a very different kind of older, jaded side to Frank Castle. In many ways, I love Thomas Jane because he was an average man, but he had that Clint Eastwood badass vibe. Ray Stevenson is just a beast where it's like, yeah, that guy was in the military. I can believe him being Frank Castle. But I love all the Frank Castles. I think Dolph Lundgren, Thomas Jane, Ray Stevenson, and John Bernthal have done an amazing job. Every Punisher has brought an aspect of the character from the comics. And it's just crazy seeing Ray Stevenson pass away because he was a severely underrated Punisher, in my opinion. I would have loved to see a continuation of Thomas Jane's, but Warzone gets a lot of flack, and I think once you look past it as a sequel or like being after Thomas Jane, when you look at it as its own thing, I think you're going to enjoy it much more, even though it does have some silly moments. I mean, there's a scene where we have some henchmen of Jigsaw's, this mobster with his cocaine addict son. There's a scene where Frank Castle flat out punches his nose in. I'm not lying. Yeah, pretty crazy stuff, but that's part of the fun of it. I mean, it's just like over the top and just bananas, but that's part of the charm of this film. And Jigsaw is a great villain. I would have loved to see this villain in a better Punisher film, but I have to say the hero and villain make this movie. Ray Stevenson and Dominic West make this a watchable, enjoyable film. And yeah, it's great seeing Frank Castle learning how to care about people again, protect a family, and having to be responsible for killing this woman's husband and this girl's father. He almost gets a second chance protecting them, and I just love the final showdown and how he just tells Jigsaw, is like, go to hell. Like, oh man. And Jigsaw making a choice between Angela Donatelli and Microchip is just cold-blooded. This movie, it's just an enjoyable film, run by the numbers Punisher, but in many ways it's also underrated And it's the perfect B movie. I give it a 3 out of 5 and a B. I know many people say this is a C, D, maybe even F film, 1, 2 stars. For me, if you're going and watching a feel-good, fun, balls to the wall action film from top to bottom, Punisher Warzone is a perfect B movie. And part of that was because of the wonderful performance of Ray Stevenson as Frank Castle. And it's just sad that he passed away so soon at 58. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on Punisher Warzone. Who's your favorite Punisher? Have you read the Punisher comics? While this film has flaws, it was cool seeing part of the Max series brought to life, and each Punisher film has done something to propel the character forward on film and in television, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I tell you one thing, Marvel would not make this film. And not only with like the dialogue, but like the gore and stuff. Like I miss like the R-rated Marvel pre-MCU stuff. But yeah, 2009, this was like one of my favorite guilty pleasures. It was kind of a step down after Dark Knight and Iron Man, but you know what, it is what it is, and it's its perfect own little entry in the Punisher history. So let me know if you saw this film, what you think of it down in the comments below, and also share your Ray Stevenson memories, you know, him as Titus Pullo and RRR in King Arthur. So many wonderful performances, and he was an actor that could be dramatic, he could be in action movies, he could pull off comedy. He's just a great talent that was gone far too soon, and I just wanted to spend some time talking about this film. And yeah, remember Ray Stevenson. May he rest in peace. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Just share your Ray Stevenson Punisher love down in the comments below. You can check out these other Punisher related videos for more content. May everyone stay safe and healthy out there. Till next time.